My daughter ignored me for 25 years until I won $15 million. Then she invited me to her birthday party, hoping for generosity from the father she had disowned. But I had a plan to get revenge for her betrayal. When I arrived, I said, "Your present is outside," and turned her party into a nightmare. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is, where you are now. The sharp, insistent trill of the phone sliced through the evening calm like a blade through silk. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, watching the gravy congeal on my meatloaf as the sound echoed through my modest kitchen. The news anchor droned on about another factory closure downtown, but all I could hear was that relentless ringing. 48 hours had passed since my television interview aired. 48 hours since I had told the local news about winning $15 million in the state lottery. The reporter had asked about family, and I had simply said I was alone since my wife Anna died 18 years ago. What I had not mentioned was the daughter who had walked out of my life 2.5 decades earlier. My weathered hand trembled as I reached for the receiver. The number on the caller ID meant nothing to me, but something deep in my chest twisted with an emotion I could not name. "Hello?" My voice came out rougher than intended, a pause then soft as silk and twice as dangerous. "Hi, Daddy. It is me, Lauren." The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. 25 years of silence shattered with those 4 words. Her voice carried the same musical quality I remembered from childhood. But underneath lurked something calculated, rehearsed. "Lauren." The name escaped as barely a whisper, disbelief making my throat tight. "I know it has been a long time." She paused again, the hesitation so perfectly timed. It felt practiced. "I saw you on the news yesterday. Congratulations on your win." There it was, the reason for this sudden resurrection of our relationship. I gripped the receiver until my knuckles went white, legs suddenly too weak to support my weight. I sank into the kitchen chair, staring at the rain streaking down the window. 25 years, I said, the words falling flat and emotionless into the space between us. I have been thinking about calling for so long, but I was scared, ashamed, I suppose. But seeing you on television, hearing that you are doing well. Her voice caught just slightly, a masterful touch of vulnerability. It made me realize how much I have missed you. My free hand found the edge of the table, gripping it like an anchor. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago, bitter and forgotten. Outside, the March evening had turned darker, matching the storm brewing in my chest. "I want to invite you to my 45th birthday party," she continued when I did not respond. "It is on April 7th. I would really love to see you, Daddy. To try to make things right between us. 45 years old. My little girl was 45 and I had missed half her life because of pride and hurt feelings." The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked away the seconds as I struggled to process this moment I dreamed about for 2.5 decades. "Your birthday," I managed, confusion mixing with the faint stirring of hope I tried to suppress. "Yes, I live in Los Angeles now. I will text you the address after we hang up. Please say you will come. Please." The desperation in that last word felt genuine. But 25 years of abandonment had taught me to be wary of my own wishful thinking. Still, she was my daughter, my only child. The baby girl Anna and I had rocked to sleep. The toddler who had called me her hero. The teenager who had been so bright and ambitious. "I will be there," I heard myself say, surprising us both. "Really, oh, Daddy, that is wonderful. I cannot wait to see you." We have so much to catch up on. After she hung up, I sat motionless in my kitchen, still gripping the receiver. The notepad beside the phone displayed her Los Angeles address in my shaky handwriting. 47 characters that might as well have been coordinates to another planet. The news had moved on to weather reports, promising warmer days ahead, but I barely heard it over the thundering of my heart and the whisper of old wounds beginning to ache. I stood slowly, my joints protesting after the day's work, and walked toward the stairs. The piece of paper with her address stayed clutched in my hand as I climbed toward my bedroom, my mind reeling with questions I was not ready to answer. Sleep eluded me entirely. The address burned like a coal in my palm as I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling where streetlight shadows danced through the blinds. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, not as the 45-year-old woman who had called tonight, but as the angry 20-year-old who had walked out of this very house. At midnight, I gave up trying. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I made my way to the living room, where cardboard boxes of photographs waited in the corner like sleeping memories. I had not looked through these in years, but tonight felt like the right time to torture myself. The first photo stopped me cold. Lauren at her college graduation, radiant in her cap and gown, standing between Anna and me. We had been so proud that day. Our daughter, the first in either family to earn a degree, ready to conquer the world with her business ambitions. That was 3 months before Anna died. 3 months before everything fell apart. The memory hit me like a physical blow, dragging me back to that terrible day in 2005. The funeral had been small. We could not afford much more. I was drowning in medical bills from Anna's cancer treatments, working double shifts at the factory just to keep our heads above water. Lauren had returned from San Francisco for the service, dressed in an expensive black suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. "Where is the money Mom left me?" she demanded the next morning, standing in this same living room with her designer suitcase already packed. My hands shook as I touched the photograph. The conversation played in my memory with crystal clarity, every cruel word etched into my soul. "Honey, there is no money. The medical bills took everything we had. More than we had." Her face had twisted with disgust, disappointment turning quickly to anger. "You are pathetic. A factory worker who could not even save his wife. Your mother loved you," I had pleaded, desperate to reach the daughter I thought I knew. This is not what she would want. But Lauren had already moved beyond hearing me. Her eyes swept across our modest home, the worn furniture, the patches in the wallpaper, the evidence of a life lived paycheck to paycheck, and found it all lacking. "I do not need a poor father like you," she had said with the casual cruelty that only comes from youth and disappointment. "I will make my own fortune. I will have the life you could never give me. Lauren, please." The word had come out broken, desperate. She had paused at the door, her hand on the knob, and delivered the final blow without even turning around. "Do not call me. Do not write. I am done with this life." The front door had slammed behind her, and I had not heard her voice again until tonight. 2 in the morning found me surrounded by scattered photographs on the coffee table. Images of happier times when we had been a family. Lauren as a baby, taking her first steps in this very room. Birthday parties with homemade cakes. Christmas mornings when we had had little money but plenty of love. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs. Through the thin walls, I could hear Mrs. Peterson's television next door, some late-night movie keeping her company in her own loneliness. The radiator clanked to life, fighting off the March chill that seemed to seep through the old windows. I picked up another photo. Lauren at 16, rolling her eyes at something I had said, but smiling despite herself. When had we lost that easy affection? When had my ambitious daughter decided that love was not worth having if it came from poor hands? The streetlight outside painted everything in harsh shadows, making the past feel even more distant. My fingers traced the edge of the photograph, remembering the weight of her small hand in mine when she was little, the way she had run to me when she scraped her knee, how she had called me the strongest man in the world. A car drove by outside, its headlights sweeping across the room before disappearing into the night. I gathered the photos into a neat pile, but kept that graduation picture on top. We had been so happy that day, so full of dreams for her future. I had imagined being at her wedding someday, holding grandchildren, watching her build the successful life she had always wanted. Instead, I had gotten 25 years of silence and a phone call that came exactly one day after my lottery numbers hit the evening news. Dawn was breaking through the kitchen window when I finally abandoned the living room, leaving the photographs scattered like pieces of a broken puzzle. The morning light revealed the exhaustion etched in my reflection on the window glass. An old man who had spent the night wrestling with ghosts. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, my joints stiff from the cold and the long night of sitting on the floor. The coffee maker sat waiting on the counter, ready for another day's routine, but my mind was still churning with questions I was not sure I wanted answered. The coffee maker gurgled to life as steam rose from my mug like the ghost of better times. April 1st had arrived with clear skies and the promise of spring, but I felt winter in my bones. My reflection in the kitchen window showed a man who had aged a decade overnight. Stubble, wrinkled clothes, eyes red from sleeplessness. The steam reminded me of another kind of shock, one that had come exactly 1 month ago. March 1st, when I had sat at this same table, checking my lottery numbers over breakfast, the ticket trembling in my hand as I matched each digit twice, then 3 times, 5, 12, 28, 35, 41, the Powerball 20. I had stared at those numbers until they blurred, certain my tired eyes were playing tricks. At 70, hope becomes a dangerous luxury. But the numbers stayed the same, stubborn as my disbelief. The drive to Sacramento that Saturday had been the longest 4 hours of my life. My hands shook so badly I had pulled over twice to collect myself, the winning ticket tucked in my wallet like a secret too big for my chest to contain. The lottery office in downtown Sacramento looked like any other government building. Gray, official, intimidating. "Sir, congratulations. You have won $15 million. The official's words had echoed in the sterile room as I gripped the arms of my chair. After taxes, $9.3 million. More money than I would see in 10 lifetimes of factory work. Life-changing money. But for what life are you certain? I had asked, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Yes, sir. We verified the ticket 3 times. The paperwork had taken hours. Bank accounts, tax forms, legal documents that made my head spin. Through it all, one question kept echoing in my mind. Who would I tell Anna was gone? My few friends from the factory were scattered to retirement communities and assisted living. My daughter. Who would you like to notify first? The bank manager had asked as we set up the account. No one. Not yet. This needs to stay quiet. For weeks, I had carried the secret alone. The money sat in the bank like a sleeping giant while I went about my normal routine. Grocery shopping, television, the occasional visit to the library. I bought a new winter coat and immediately felt guilty about the expense. even though I could afford 1,000 coats now. Then came yesterday's interview. The local news had somehow gotten wind of my win, public records probably, and wanted to do a human interest story about the lucky retiree from Chicago. I had agreed, thinking it might be nice to have 5 minutes of fame at my age. "What will you do with the money, Mr. Beaumont?" the young reporter had asked. Her camera crew crowding my small living room. "Help some local charities, I suppose. Maybe fix up the house a bit. I have been alone since my wife passed 18 years ago, so I do not need much." I had mentioned being alone deliberately, carefully. If Lauren ever saw the interview, she would know her father was wealthy and lonely. A perfect combination for someone who had cut ties over money. The coffee burned my tongue as I took a sip, but I barely noticed. The timeline was too perfect to be coincidence. Interview aired Monday evening. Daughter called Tuesday evening. 25 years of silence broken exactly 48 hours after she learned about my fortune. I set the mug down harder than necessary, the sound sharp in the morning quiet. Outside, my neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, was already tending his garden, getting ready for spring planting. Normal people doing normal things while I wrestled with the possibility that my only child saw me as nothing more than a lottery ticket. The phone on the counter seemed to mock me with its silence. I could call her back, test her somehow, see if her sudden affection had any foundation beyond my bank balance. The smart thing would be to protect myself, to assume the worst about her motives. But she was still my daughter, the little girl who had sat on my shoulders at the county fair, who had made me Father's Day cards with construction paper and glue, even after 25 years of abandonment. Part of me wanted to believe she had had a change of heart, that seeing me on television had reminded her of the father she had once loved. The kitchen clock ticked toward 8. Rush hour traffic hummed in the distance as Chicago woke up around me. I walked to the window and stared out at the street where I had lived for 40 years, watching the world move forward while I stood still. My reflection stared back from the glass. An old man holding a coffee mug, surrounded by the modest life my daughter had found so shameful. But now I had something she wanted. Now I had power. The realization settled over me slowly, like dust on an unused shelf. For the first time in 25 years, I held the cards in whatever game we were about to play. The question was whether I had the courage to deal them. I reached for the phone, my finger hovering over the buttons. Her number was still fresh in my memory from last night's caller ID. Just a simple test call to hear her voice again, to probe gently at her motives. The morning light streamed through the window, illuminating the determination that had begun to grow in my tired eyes. The steam rising from my coffee cup reminded me of something else, the blazing studio lights from 2 days ago. March 30th, the day that changed everything, though I had not realized it at the time. WLS's downtown Chicago studio had felt like stepping into another world. Chrome and glass everywhere, cables snaking across polished floors, monitors displaying my nervous face from 6 different angles. I had arrived an hour early, clutching the lottery ticket in my sweaty palm, wearing my best light blue shirt, the one Anna had bought me for church years ago. "Mr. Beaumont, I am Janet Morris. Thanks for coming in today." The news anchor's smile was practiced perfection, her makeup flawless under the harsh lighting. Behind her, a camera operator adjusted his equipment while a studio assistant fussed with reflectors, everyone moving with choreographed precision. They had led me to makeup first, a humbling experience for a man who had never worn anything but aftershave. The young woman dabbing powder on my forehead chatted about the weather while I stared at my reflection, wondering what Anna would think of her husband becoming a local celebrity. Just be yourself, Janet had advised as we settled into the interview chairs. Our viewers love authentic stories. Authentic. If only she knew how carefully I planned to edit mine. The red recording light blinked on, and suddenly, I was performing for thousands of strangers. Janet's questions came smoothly, professionally crafted to extract maximum human interest from my unexpected fortune. $15 million. That is life-changing money. Mr. Beaumont, what are your plans? I had practiced this answer. Help local charities. Chicago has been good to me for 40 years. Time to give back. Any family to share this incredible joy with. Here came the moment I dreaded and anticipated. The careful omission that might just reach the right ears in Los Angeles. My wife passed away 18 years ago. I live alone now. The studio fell quiet except for the hum of air conditioning. Janet's expression softened with genuine sympathy, the kind that made good television. No children. She pressed gently. I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to suggest complicated history. That is complicated. Janet nodded knowingly, professional enough not to probe deeper into personal pain. Instead, she steered towards safer territory. My plans for the money, my advice for other lottery players, my thoughts on sudden wealth. But the damage was done, or perhaps the invitation was sent. A wealthy widower alone in Chicago, sitting on millions of dollars with no family to protect him or share his good fortune. Exactly the kind of target my daughter had always preferred. The photo session afterward felt surreal, holding an oversized check while cameras flashed, grinning on command. While inside, I wondered if anyone watching truly cared about my happiness or just my bank balance. The lottery officials posed beside me, everyone smiling like we were old friends instead of strangers connected by random numbers and lucky timing. Driving home in my 15-year-old pickup truck, the lottery ticket safely tucked back in my wallet. I had felt oddly empty. Success without someone to share it with was just an expensive form of loneliness. The studio assistant had handed me a business card as I left. Mr. Beaumont. You will probably get some calls after this airs. People wanting money, investment opportunities, that sort of thing. Be careful who you trust. Sound advice I should have heeded more seriously. Now, sitting in my kitchen 96 hours later, I realized that broadcast had been more than just local news. It had been a beacon, a signal flare sent up into the darkness where my daughter lived her ambitious life. And like a moth drawn to flame, she had come circling back the very next evening. I set down my coffee cup and reached for the phone, finally understanding the game we were about to play. My finger hovered over the final digit of her number, the morning sun streaming through the kitchen window like a spotlight on this moment of truth. Everything hinged on the next few minutes, 25 years of questions about to be answered with surgical precision. The dial tone seemed to ring forever before her voice answered, honey, sweet, and calculated. Hi, Daddy. I was hoping you would call back. Already the performance had begun. I pulled out a notepad and pen, ready to document every nuance of her responses. Hi, Lauren. We need to talk about that television interview. A pause. Barely perceptible. But I caught it. The momentary hesitation of someone preparing their defense. Oh, what about it? Daddy. The endearment felt rehearsed, like dialogue from a play she had been practicing. I gripped the pen tighter and began my test. There has been a mistake. The TV station got their facts wrong. What kind of mistake? Her voice carried a new edge, sharper than the false sweetness. I did not really win $15 million. It was an administrative error at the lottery office. They are issuing a correction today. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. I counted them, watching the kitchen clock tick away her true nature. Then why am I wasting my time with this conversation? There it was, the real Lauren Steele, stripped of pretense and revealed in all her calculating glory. No concern for my disappointment, no sympathy for the embarrassment of a public correction. Just cold fury at having her time wasted on a poor father. Excuse me. I kept my voice level, though my heart hammered against my ribs. She caught herself immediately, the mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. Oh, Daddy, that is so disappointing. You must be devastated. I am sorry this happened to you. But the recovery came too late. I had heard her true voice, the one that had walked out of this house 25 years ago and never looked back. Actually, Lauren, I was testing you. I let the words fall like stones into still water. The money is real, all of it. Another pause, this one filled with calculation. When she spoke again, the artificial warmth was cranked up to maximum volume, overcompensating for her earlier slip. Oh, Daddy, you scared me. I am just so happy for you. $15 million. Can you imagine? We will have so much fun at my birthday party. I cannot wait to celebrate your good fortune. We as if she had been part of my life when the ticket was purchased, when the numbers were drawn, when I had sat alone in this kitchen with no one to share the moment that changed everything. I scribbled notes furiously, capturing her exact words, wasting my time, followed immediately by, "So happy for you." The transformation was so complete. It would have been impressive if it were not so heartbreaking. "The party's still on April 7th, I asked, already knowing the answer. "Absolutely. I have been planning something special. Just thinking about introducing you to my friends. Showing off my successful father." Her voice trailed off in what I supposed was meant to sound like happy emotion. After we hung up, I stared at my notes for a long time. The evidence was there in black and white. Her immediate coldness when the money disappeared. Her instant warmth when it returned. 25 years of wondering about her true feelings. And now I had mathematical proof of exactly where I stood in her priorities. The coffee had gone cold while I conducted my experiment, but I barely noticed. Something fundamental had shifted in the landscape of my heart. The father who had spent 2.5 decades hoping for reconciliation was gone, replaced by someone harder, more strategic. I walked slowly from the kitchen to the living room, carrying the notepad like a piece of crucial evidence, which I supposed it was. Evening settled over Chicago like a blanket, the golden hour light filtering through my living room windows as I sat in Anna's favorite chair. Her photograph rested on the side table, showing the woman who had been my moral compass for 30 years of marriage. The hours between that morning's phone call and this moment of reckoning had passed in a blur of mundane activities. Washing dishes, folding laundry, watering the small garden Anna had planted behind the house. But my mind kept returning to Lauren's voice, the way it had shifted from warm to cold and back again like a radio dial being turned. "Anna, what would you say about this?" I asked her picture, touching the glass over her smiling face. She had always believed in consequences. My wife, not cruel punishment, but natural results that taught real lessons. When Lauren was 12 and stole candy from the corner store, Anna had marched her back to apologize and work off the debt. When she had lied about her grades in high school, Anna had removed her driving privileges until honesty returned. Actions have consequences. She used to say, love sometimes requires difficult lessons. 25 years. I had spent 25 years making excuses for my daughter's silence, convincing myself she would call when she was ready, that family bonds would eventually overcome whatever had driven us apart. But today's test had shown me the truth. There was no family bond, just a bank account. She had finally noticed the notebook lay open on my lap, her cruel words staring back at me. Why am I wasting my time with this 5 minutes into learning her father might be poor again? And she had already written him off. 5 minutes to reveal what 25 years of silence had really meant. I could not hear Anna's actual voice anymore. 18 years had dulled even my sharpest memories. But I could imagine what she would tell me. That love without boundaries was not love at all, just enabling. That a grown woman who had chosen greed over family needed to learn what that choice really cost. The neighborhood outside my window buzzed with life. Mr. Jenkins trimmed his hedge while his grandchildren played in the yard. Mrs. Peterson walked her ancient cocker spaniel past my fence, stopping to wave when she saw me in the window. Normal families living normal lives, taking their connections for granted in the way I had once dreamed of doing. But I had been given a different path. My only child had chosen to see me as either a piggy bank or an embarrassment. Nothing in between. Well, if she wanted to treat our relationship as a transaction, perhaps it was time to show her what a real transaction looked like. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and began writing. Not poetry or sentiment, but strategy. Lauren had mentioned business ventures over the years in her rare communications. Startups, investors, the kind of ambitious projects that required significant capital. If she was calling me now, desperate enough to resurrect a dead relationship, then something had gone wrong with her golden plans. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I wrote the first words of what would become my daughter's education. Research Lauren's current business situation. Find leverage. Design appropriate consequences. Not destruction. Anna would never approve of that. But justice. A lesson in the real cost of treating family like expendable assets. 25 years of silence had taught me patience. Now it was time to teach her something in return. Outside, the streetlights began flickering on as Chicago settled into another night. I stood slowly from Anna's chair, my joints protesting the long sit, and walked toward the spare bedroom where my old computer waited in hibernation. Lauren wanted to play games with family loyalty and money. Fine. But after 40 years of marriage to a wise woman and 25 years of lonely reflection, I had learned a thing or two about both. The old computer hummed to life in my spare bedroom, its fan whirring like a tired engine as the monitor flickered awake. April 3rd had arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I settled into the creaky office chair with my first cup of coffee. Sleep had eluded me again. Too many questions churning in my mind about exactly what kind of business my daughter had been conducting in California. I had spent yesterday organizing the sparse information I had, writing down everything I remembered from our conversation. Business ventures she had mentioned. Investors. The kind of ambitious projects that required significant capital and delivered impressive promises. If she was calling me now, desperate enough to resurrect a 25-year silence, then something had gone seriously wrong with those golden plans. The internet connection crawled at the speed of old phone lines. But I had patience. 70 years of life had taught me that the most important discoveries could not be rushed. Lauren Steel business, I typed into the search box, feeling like an archaeological expedition leader dusting off ancient artifacts. The first results painted a picture of success. Professional headshot on LinkedIn, mentions in entrepreneurship articles, quotes about innovation and sustainable business practices. My daughter had certainly learned to market herself well, but something felt rehearsed about it all, too polished, like a resume written by someone desperate to hide gaps in employment. I clicked deeper, adding terms like startup and funding to my searches. The cheerful professional facade began showing cracks. Page 3 of Google results revealed the first red flag. Eco Energy Solutions under investigation for misuse of investor funds. My coffee went cold as I read, Eco Energy Solutions founded 2018. Solar panel installation startup. $600,000 raised from private investors. Company dissolved 2019 after funds disappeared and promised installations never materialized. CEO Lauren Steele, the old printer, wheezed as it spat out the article. Ink already running low. I would need more cartridges if this investigation continued much longer. Fresh Harvest Markets. Lauren Steele, I typed next, following threads that connected like a spider web of deception. Another startup. Another group of investors. $400,000 vanished in 2021 after promises of organic food delivery services that never launched. Same pattern. Big promises. Enthusiastic fundraising. Mysterious disappearance of capital. By noon, I had discovered Bridge Advisory Services, her most recent venture from 2022. Business advisory services for small companies. $500,000 missing. Multiple complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. 3 investors specifically named in an ongoing lawsuit: Alex Rivera, Sarah Kingsley, and Mike Thornton. I wrote their names carefully in my notebook, my handwriting steadier than it had been in days. These were not just business failures. They were systematic theft. My daughter had not just abandoned her family. She had become a predator who fed on other people's dreams and retirement savings. LinkedIn profiles gave me faces to match the names. Alex Rivera, 50-year-old venture capitalist from Seattle. His bio mentioning lessons learned from failed investments. Sarah Kingsley, corporate lawyer from Denver. Her profile emphasizing justice for small business fraud victims. Mike Thornton, entrepreneur from Boston, whose recent posts suggested someone still burning with anger over financial betrayal. The sun had set outside my window before I found their contact information. Business addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, all publicly available through their professional networks. Modern technology made finding people remarkably simple, even for someone whose computer skills had been learned late in life. At 2 a.m, I closed the laptop and stared at 3 manila folders spread across my desk. Each contained printed articles, contact information, and detailed timelines of my daughter's systematic deception. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and heartbreakingly clear. I gathered the folders and walked slowly toward my bedroom, my joints protesting the long hours hunched over the computer screen. Instead of lying down, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the first folder again, studying Alex Rivera's photograph in the dim light from the hallway. These people deserved to know where their money had gone. Saturday morning arrived with steady rain drumming against the windows, the perfect weather for indoor scheming. I had spent Friday organizing my research, calling the business numbers to verify they were still active, and drafting letters by hand until the wording felt exactly right. Today was execution day. The computer screen glowed as I created a new email account. concernedcitizenchicago@gmail.com. Anonymous but believable. The kind of address someone might use when sharing sensitive information about criminal activity. My fingers moved slowly across the keyboard. Decades of hunt and peck typing serving me well in this moment of digital revenge. The first email went to Alex Rivera in Seattle. Dear Mr. Rivera, I have information regarding Lauren Steele's current whereabouts and activities. She will be hosting a birthday party at 847 East Ocean Boulevard, Apartment 12B, Los Angeles, on April 7th at 8 p.m. This may be your opportunity to serve legal papers or collect what she owes. I understand you lost $250,000 to her Bridge Advisory Services fraud. Multiple other investors will likely be interested in this information. A concerned party who believes in justice. I attached copies of the news articles I had printed, creating a digital evidence package that would leave no doubt about Lauren's pattern of behavior. My hand hesitated over the mouse button for exactly 3 seconds, the last moment when this could still be reversed, when I could choose forgiveness over justice. But then I remembered her voice on the phone. Why am I wasting my time with this click send? Sarah Kingsley's email followed 30 minutes later, crafted to appeal to her legal mindset. Miss Kingsley, as a fellow advocate for justice, I am writing to inform you that Lauren Steele will be at the following address on April 7th, 8 p.m., 847 East Ocean Boulevard, Apartment 12B, Los Angeles. Given your losses in the Bridge Advisory Services matter, you may wish to coordinate with other affected investors. Documentation attached. Someone who believes criminals should face consequences. The third email to Mike Thornton required a different approach. His LinkedIn posts suggested someone who took business betrayal personally, who understood the human cost of financial fraud. Mr. Thornton, Lauren Steele destroyed your trust and stole your money. She is doing the same to others, including trying to manipulate her elderly father. She will be celebrating her 45th birthday at 847 East Ocean Boulevard, Apartment 12B, Los Angeles, on April 7th at 8 p.m. Time to collect what she owes. A father who is tired of his daughter's lies. Each email carried 25 years of accumulated disappointment, transformed into precise coordinates for justice. I had given them her exact location, the perfect timing, and documented proof of her criminal pattern. What they did with that information was up to them, but I had provided every tool they needed to confront the woman who had stolen their futures. The rain continued against the windows as I reviewed each message one final time. No threats, nothing that could be construed as encouraging violence, just information sharing between people who had been wronged by the same criminal, perfectly legal, completely justified, and devastatingly effective. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen for lunch, checking my watch out of habit. 48 hours until Lauren's party. 48 hours for these emails to reach their destinations and for 3 very angry investors to make their plans. The phone rang as I buttered my sandwich. Unknown number from Seattle. I let it go to voicemail, smiling slightly as I heard Alex Rivera's excited voice thanking an anonymous tipster for information that might finally bring justice to a case that had consumed 2 years of his life. The second call came from Denver 10 minutes later. Sarah Kingsley's legal training was evident in her carefully worded message, but underneath the professional language was the sharp satisfaction of someone who had been waiting for exactly this kind of break. By evening, I had received confirmation that all 3 emails had been opened and read. My anonymous account showed replies requesting additional details, which I provided with methodical precision. Phone numbers, social media profiles, background on the party attendees, everything they would need to coordinate their approach. 25 years of silence ended with 3 emails and a few attached documents. My daughter had taught me that family meant nothing without money, that love was secondary to financial advantage. Now she was about to learn what happened when that philosophy met people who had nothing left to lose. I powered down the computer and walked to the living room, settling into Anna's chair with a cup of tea. 2 days until the party. 2 days until Lauren discovered that actions, even 25-year-old actions, eventually demand payment. Los Angeles glittered around me like a jewelry box as my taxi wound through the West Side. 6 hours of highway driving from Chicago, finally behind me. The modest hotel near Hollywood Boulevard had served its purpose, a place to shower, change clothes, and steel my nerves for what was about to unfold. Now, at 7:30 on April 7th, I carried a small wrapped box toward my daughter's apartment building, playing the role of proud father one last time. The doorman barely glanced at me as I gave Lauren's name. Just another elderly relative arriving for a birthday celebration. The elevator carried me smoothly to the 12th floor, its polished brass fixtures reflecting a man who looked calmer than he felt. My watch showed exactly 7:30. Perfect timing. "Daddy, you made it." Lauren's voice rang through the hallway as she opened the door, her arms stretching wide for a theatrical hug that felt as rehearsed as everything else about our renewed relationship. Her apartment sparkled with expensive taste and hidden desperation. Crystal champagne flutes caught the light from carefully arranged candles, while a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. 25 guests mingled in designer clothes, their conversations floating between stock prices and vacation destinations. But my eyes caught details others missed. Overdue bills stacked on the kitchen counter, slightly worn spots on the Persian rugs, the subtle signs of someone living beyond increasingly limited means. "Everyone, meet my father, the lottery millionaire," she announced, steering me toward a cluster of impressed faces. The guests circled like well-dressed sharks, their interest in my presence suddenly sharpening. I smiled and nodded through introductions, playing the role of naive windfall recipient while internally counting minutes until 8. "Tell us about your incredible win," demanded a woman whose jewelry probably cost more than my annual pension. "Later. Perhaps. Tonight belongs to Lauren." I deflected, raising my champagne glass toward my daughter. "Such a devoted father," the woman gushed to Lauren. "You are so lucky to have family support." "Yes, he has recently become very supportive," Lauren replied, shooting me a meaningful look that spoke volumes about her expectations for this evening. I wandered through the party, observing the careful choreography of social climbing and networking. These people were not here for Lauren's birthday. They were here for proximity to my money. The conversations followed predictable patterns, compliments about her business acumen, leading questions about investment opportunities, subtle inquiries about my financial planning. Lauren orchestrated it all with practiced skill, gradually steering discussions toward her need for business partners and strategic investors. Each hint grew bolder as the evening progressed, her desperation bleeding through the elegant facade like ink through expensive paper. "Daddy has been so generous with his advice," she told a small group near the window. "We are exploring some exciting opportunities together." I checked my watch. 7:55. Any moment now. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the conversations louder, the jazz quartet's music unable to mask the underlying tension that only I could sense. Lauren moved through her guests with increasing energy, introducing me repeatedly as her successful father, while dropping broader hints about needing investment capital for her next venture. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Los Angeles spread out below us like a circuit board of ambition and greed. Somewhere in this city, 3 people I had never met were making their final preparations for a confrontation years in the making. Alex Rivera, Sarah Kingsley, and Mike Thornton. Investors who had trusted my daughter with their dreams and watched her transform those dreams into expensive champagne and designer dresses. The secret to success, Lauren was saying to a captivated audience, is recognizing opportunity when it presents itself. Sometimes fortune literally calls you on the phone. She glanced at me while speaking, her smile brilliant and predatory. The woman who had abandoned her father for 25 years now saw him as the solution to all her financial problems. The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. 7:58. I moved closer to the entrance, positioning myself where I could watch both the door and Lauren's face when her past finally caught up with her present. 8 arrived with the sharp sound of the doorbell cutting through jazz music and champagne-fueled conversation. Lauren paused mid-sentence in her pitch to a potential investor, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. "I will get it," she called brightly, but I caught the slight furrow in her brow, the look of someone who was not expecting additional guests. As she walked toward the door, heels clicking confidently on marble floors, I took a sip of champagne and savored the moment. 25 years of questions were about to be answered. 25 years of silence were about to end, with considerably more noise than either of us had anticipated. The doorbell's sharp sound cut through the party chatter like a blade through silk, but Lauren barely paused in her pitch to the distinguished gentleman beside me. She had been building momentum for the past 10 minutes, weaving tales of investment opportunities that required strategic partnerships with experienced financial advisors. "Actually, Dad, since you are here," she turned toward me with that practiced smile, abandoning her previous conversation mid-sentence. "I could really use your help with some exciting business ventures I have been developing." There it was, the moment I had been expecting since stepping into her apartment. 25 years of silence, erased by the promise of lottery millions. I took a slow sip of champagne, savoring both the expensive taste and the perfect timing. "Perfect timing, sweetheart," I said, setting down my glass with deliberate care. "What do you mean?" Her eyes brightened with anticipation, greed practically glowing in her perfectly made-up face. "I brought you a very special birthday gift, something I think you have been waiting for." The doorbell rang again, more insistent now. Lauren glanced toward the entrance with mild irritation, clearly frustrated by the interruption of her carefully orchestrated money request. Really, what kind of gift? She moved closer to me, her voice dropping to the intimate tone she had perfected for extracting favors. "It is waiting right outside your door," I said, pointing toward the entrance where the sound had originated. "Outside, how exciting." Her smile became genuine for the first time all evening, anticipation replacing calculation. "You should not have gone to such trouble, Daddy." The endearment felt like sandpaper against my ears, but I maintained my expression of paternal affection. Around us, her guests continued their conversations about market trends and vacation properties, blissfully unaware that their hostess was about to face the reckoning of her lifetime. Lauren practically skipped toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the rhythm of someone expecting wonderful news. I followed at a measured pace, positioning myself where I could observe both her face and the reactions of her guests. When reality shattered their elegant evening, "I cannot imagine what you could have arranged," she called over her shoulder, already reaching for the door handle. "You always were full of surprises." Indeed, I was, though perhaps not the kind she was expecting. The lock clicked open, the door swung wide, and Lauren Steele came face to face with her past. 3 figures stood in the hallway like a tribunal of justice. Alex Rivera, immaculate in his business suit, carried a leather briefcase that promised legal documentation. Sarah Kingsley, her expression professionally neutral, held a manila folder thick with evidence. Mike Thornton's face showed the barely controlled anger of someone who had been waiting years for this moment. Lauren Steele. Alex Rivera's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to important meetings and life-changing decisions. Her confident smile faltered, recognition flickering across her features like a candle in wind. The champagne glass in her hand began to tremble almost imperceptibly. "We need to talk," Sarah Kingsley added, her legal training evident in the measured tone that suggested this was not a request. Behind me, I heard conversations beginning to fade as guests sensed the shift in atmosphere. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Laughter died in throats. The jazz quartet continued playing, but their music now seemed inappropriately cheerful against the tension building in the doorway. "I do not understand," Lauren stammered, looking from face to face as if hoping one might prove to be someone else entirely. "Oh, but you do," Mike Thornton said, his voice carrying 24 months of accumulated fury. You understand perfectly. I watched from across the room as my daughter's world began to crumble, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness that surprised me with its complexity. This was justice, but justice tinged with the grief of a father watching his child reap consequences he had helped orchestrate. The gift had been delivered exactly as promised. These are legal documents regarding your fraudulent business practices, Sarah Kingsley announced. Stepping across the threshold with professional precision, her voice carried the kind of authority that transformed elegant apartments into courtrooms. Lauren backed away from the door, her champagne glass finally slipping from nerveless fingers to shatter against the marble floor. The crystal fragments scattered like her carefully constructed facade glittering under the soft party lights. I do not know what you are talking about, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Recognition had already dawned in her eyes, the look of someone whose nightmares had suddenly stepped into reality. Alex Rivera opened his briefcase with mechanical precision, extracting a thick folder marked with legal tabs and official seals. Eco Energy Solutions, Fresh Harvest Markets, Bridge Advisory Services. Each company name fell like a hammer blow. Years of deception laid bare in 3 simple phrases. You stole over $1.5 million from innocent investors, Mike Thornton added, his restraint finally cracking to reveal the raw anger beneath. People who trusted you with their life savings. Retirees who believed your promises about sustainable business and reliable returns. The party atmosphere disintegrated like sugar in rain. Guests pressed closer, some pulling out phones to record what was clearly becoming a public scandal. Others moved toward the exit, unwilling to be associated with whatever was unfolding. Dad, who are these people? Lauren turned to me with desperate eyes, seeking shelter in the paternal relationship she had abandoned decades ago. I set down my champagne glass with careful deliberation, meeting her gaze with the steady look of someone who had finally chosen truth over hope. They are your past, sweetheart. Finally catching up. Understanding crashed over her features like a cold wave. Her perfectly applied makeup could not hide the pallor that spread across her face as she realized the scope of what was happening. You did this. You brought them here. Happy birthday, Lauren. The words carried no malice, no celebration, just the quiet satisfaction of seeing balance restored to a tilted world. For 25 years, I had wondered if my daughter possessed a conscience. Tonight, I had my answer. You vindictive old man, she snarled, her mask finally slipping completely. This is not over. I will sue you for harassment, for stalking, for what Sarah Kingsley interrupted, producing another document from her folder, for providing information about criminal activity to law enforcement, for helping victims locate stolen property. The apartment buzzed with whispered conversations as guests processed what they were witnessing. Some filmed discreetly with their phones, while others gathered purses and coats, clearly planning strategic departures before the situation worsened. Alex Rivera spread financial documents across Lauren's coffee table, transforming her elegant living room into a makeshift courtroom. Bank statements, fraudulent contracts, email trails, evidence of systematic theft laid out between champagne glasses and birthday decorations. $1.5 million, he announced to the room. That is the current total of verified losses from your business ventures. This does not include interest, damages, or the emotional distress you have caused dozens of families. We filed criminal complaints with the FBI, Sarah Kingsley added, producing official letterhead documents, federal wire fraud, securities violations, interstate transportation of stolen property. The charges are already being processed. Mike Thornton leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. You took my daughter's college fund. money I had saved for 15 years, working double shifts so she could have opportunities I never had. Lauren looked around the room desperately, seeking allies among people who had been impressed by her father's lottery win just minutes earlier. But the guests who had crowded around for introductions now maintained careful distance, social survival instincts overriding any temporary associations. "This is all fabricated," she declared, but her voice cracked on the words, "You cannot prove anything." "Actually, we can," Alex Rivera said, holding up a smartphone displaying recorded conversations. "You kept detailed records of your fraudulent activities. Very thorough businesswoman, just unfortunately criminal. I watched my daughter's empire of lies collapse in real time, feeling neither joy nor sadness, but something closer to inevitability. Anna had always said that truth was like water. It found its way through any barrier, no matter how carefully constructed. The jazz quartet had stopped playing, their instruments silent in the face of unfolding drama. Party guests whispered among themselves before making quiet exits, leaving champagne glasses and canapes abandoned as they distanced themselves from association with scandal. 25 years, I said quietly, as much to myself as to the room. 25 years of wondering if you had learned anything about consequences. Lauren's response was a string of threats and accusations that revealed more about her character than any evidence folder could contain. But I was already walking toward the door, my part in this drama complete. Behind me, legal documents rustled as 3 determined investors began the process of recovering their stolen dreams. The drive back to Chicago took 6 hours through gray April weather that matched my mood. Neither celebratory nor regretful, but something closer to resolution. The radio carried news of arrests and investigations, though my daughter's case would take months to wind through federal courts. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. I had spent that first night in a Hollywood Boulevard hotel, watching local news coverage of what reporters called the birthday party bust. Lauren's face appeared on screen between segments about traffic accidents and weather updates. A fallen entrepreneur whose crimes had finally caught up with her. The coverage focused on investor fraud rather than family drama, which suited me perfectly. By the time I reached Chicago's city limits, I had made my decision about what came next. Anna's grave sat in Oakwood Cemetery under an old oak tree we had chosen together 40 years ago, back when death seemed like an abstract concept that happened to other people. The headstone bore her name, dates, and the words beloved wife and mother. Though that last word carried bitter irony now. "And it is over," I said to the carved granite, placing fresh flowers beside the weather-worn inscription. She made her choice just like she did 25 years ago. You always said actions have consequences. The cemetery stretched around us in peaceful silence, filled with the kind of families who had stuck together through poverty and illness, joy and sorrow. Real families unlike the broken fragments Lauren and I had become. The money. I continued, touching the cold stone where her name appeared in permanent letters. Let us use it the way you would have. Help families like we used to be. 3 days later, I sat in the First National Bank's conference room, signing documents that established the Anna Beaumont Memorial Fund for working families. $3 million of lottery winnings dedicated to helping Chicago families navigate medical crises and financial emergencies. The kind of problems Anna and I had faced during her illness when choosing between rent and chemotherapy had nearly destroyed us. The first recipients were a young couple whose son needed heart surgery, a grandmother raising 3 children while battling diabetes, and a veteran whose disability benefits could not cover both medication and housing. Families facing the same impossible choices we had confronted 18 years ago when hope seemed as expensive as proper medical care. "Mr. Beaumont," the bank president said as we concluded the paperwork, "this is incredibly generous. Your wife would be proud. She would have been Anna had always believed that money was meant to flow like water, not to be hoarded, but to nourish whatever it touched. Lauren had seen wealth as something to accumulate and display, but Anna understood it as a tool for healing broken situations. The community center where Anna had volunteered during her final years became the foundation's headquarters. The same building where she had taught literacy classes and organized food drives now housed offices where families could apply for emergency assistance. Her photograph hung in the main hallway, smiling at visitors who came seeking help rather than handouts. "Mrs. Chen," I said to the single mother whose daughter needed insulin, "the foundation will cover your medical expenses for the next 6 months. Focus on your family, not the bills. Mr. Rodriguez, your foreclosure has been prevented. The foundation will assist with mortgage payments until your disability case is resolved. Mrs. Washington, your grandson's trade school tuition is paid. He can start classes next month." Each check I signed carried Anna's memory forward, transforming lottery luck into genuine hope for families who had exhausted other options. The money that might have gone to Lauren's continued fraudulent schemes instead supported honest people facing honest struggles. Evenings found me at the community center teaching basic computer skills to job seekers and helping families navigate complex assistance programs. The work felt familiar. Anna and I had been poor long enough to understand the maze of bureaucracy that accompanied financial crisis. My phone rang as I locked up the center one evening in late April, 3 weeks after the birthday party that had changed everything. The caller ID showed a number I did not recognize, but the voice belonged to Mike Thornton. "Mr. Beaumont, I wanted to thank you. The FBI recovered 50% of what she stole from us. Not everything, but enough to start over. I am glad justice worked," I replied, walking toward my truck under streetlights that illuminated the neighborhood where Anna and I had built our life together. "She is going to prison," he continued. "Federal sentencing guidelines suggest 6 to 8 years. Her assets are being liquidated to pay restitution. 6 to 8 years. Enough time for her to learn lessons that 44 years of life had not taught her, or enough time to plan her next scheme, though federal conviction would make future fraud considerably more difficult." "Mr. Beaumont," Mike's voice carried a note of curiosity. "Why did you do it? Help strangers instead of family." I looked up at stars barely visible through Chicago's urban glow, thinking about loyalty and betrayal, justice and mercy, the complex mathematics of love and consequences. "Sometimes strangers treat you better than family," I said finally. "And sometimes family has to earn the title." The community center's lights cast long shadows across empty parking spaces where tomorrow would bring new families seeking help. Inside, Anna's photograph watched over application forms and hope. Money transformed from instrument of greed into tool of grace. My daughter had taught me that wealth without love was worthless. Now I was learning that love without boundaries was equally meaningless. The lottery had given me money, but justice had restored my soul. If you enjoyed this tale of justice and redemption, share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do in Miles's situation? Let us know your impressions, and feel free to ask questions for more discussion. Your interactions keep the channel alive and engaging. To hear the next captivating story, simply click the box on the left. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more inspiring narratives.